Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast, episode 198 million. This is a podcast where we have a chat every week and figure out what we think about everything. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Majic.
We are in different countries, enjoying drastically different lifestyles, but many things to talk about somehow nevertheless. And this week we're going to talk, the headline is not being a misery guts. How hard is it not to be a misery guts? What's it like when someone else is being a misery guts and you're having a good day? What's it like how am I able to bring this high level of energy every Friday morning even though I can't be bothered? Or is it good that I bring some energy every Friday morning? Does that teach me that I could do that in other situations as well? The energy flow, man. Except,
is it always your turn or my? When I say
turn,
your, I mean one's. Is it always my turn to bring the energy? But, why have I always got to cheer everyone up? Why do I have to be cheerful? Why can't I be in a misery guts sometimes? Those kind of things.
Throwing a tantrum once in a while. I've just had enough of being resilient. I'm just going to complain and give you a hard time for hurting my feelings. All that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
let's do it.
Just see what we think about that, and that is the podcast. Let's play some music. Got all those titles of episodes swimming past.
We must have analysed so much of our thoughts.
We have
so many.
We don't need to dream or sleep. We just talk on a podcast, and that is how we prioritise and arrange our feelings. What's the best thing that's happened to you this week, Ivanka? How's life?
This week, on the island of Brač in Croatia, in the little village of Sutivan, it has rained. And that, my friends, is great news.
You've been talking about it. It's finally happened.
It's finally happened. It has
sleeted
finally
here yesterday.
I know. I may not have to water the garden, which is an absolute joy and relief. So that's been great. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. That's it really. No, the other. I'm going to stick the second one in
two.
Actually.
Do two. Do double.
My daughter, who is now 7, the child as we call her, had a little go at cutting her own hair, and I took her to the hairdressers, and now she sports this extremely stylish fringe, which I'm slightly envious of, being a curly head person. Fringes and curly hair always dubious, but she's loving it, and watching her walk around strutting with her new fringe is quite entertaining. So there you go. There's a couple of pictures for you to enjoy.
Well, I had a haircut yesterday, and it was like the guy greeted me by name as I came in. Off the street to see if they had something straight away. It's Michael. But I think the main reason he remembered me is because I think I was visibly disappointed last time that he'd cut the top short, and I was like, no, because I was looking forward to the haircut that I finally discovered that I like. So now I'm back to having more or less the one that I wanted, right 8 weeks ago. So that's happy. But also, and the reason I had it yesterday was to celebrate that I got my spike of sales money in the bank account yesterday. So just it's nice to have. I gave myself a little bit of pocket money, and I resolved not to buy any Apple products. After all, let's just keep scraping by on what I've got, even though I've broken 2 of the ports on this MacBook Pro by plugging in a cheap cable off Amazon. Now I've got 2 dead ports on a $4,000 laptop. Yay!
Really?
I think so. I think they're just dead. The repairability score on iFixit.com for this MacBook Pro is 1 out of 10. So I do not have high hopes for being able to fix it. But it's nice to. I just decided I'm going to try and do the advertising thing, turn money into more money. Use capital. I've heard capital is the way you make money. So try and turn it into capital instead of it being through the Michael work bottleneck, right, as is my usual tradition. So yeah, I'm gonna get myself some new pajamas. I'm looking forward to it. Very
Sounds
exciting.
delightful.
Yes, we're going to a craft fair tomorrow, so I might help myself to a cutting board, perhaps an interesting
Yes.
wheelie knife or something. I don't know, some materials. Just
Wheelie knife.
who knows? We'll see. So it will be nice, and that's that. Floaty Tate Gallery
Things. Art.
amoebae. Yeah.
Amoebae.
Grumpy. It's hard to remember feeling grumpy when you're not grumpy, and I'm not feeling grumpy today. But and sometimes takes effort to get out of a grump, but it is possible. And I think there can be some resentment when you're not in a grump. And I don't want to take it straight here, but if I'm not in a grump and someone else is in a grump and they're not trying not to be in a grump, and now suddenly I'm in a grump as well, and you just kind of go, why is everything so terrible, and why am I so maligned? But yeah, but that there is a strange energy flow to the whole thing, isn't there?
There is.
Because you can, if you pull yourself out of it, then you can stay out of it, and there's that sort of latent energy, maybe you could think of it as, the way when ice transitions to water, there's a certain phase of matter where you're putting energy in and nothing's happening, and then it shifts into water, and that sort of latent heat of changing the state. I think it's sort of like you put in energy to change your state, but then you sort of stay in the new state, and it takes energy to go back. You have to pull out a lot more energy to go back into the grumpy state. So it's always possible, but sometimes you just don't wanna.
I think that's a definite. I think there's two places where it happens. I think we could do work and personal life, because there are some people in a work environment that bring more of their grumps to work than other people. And I think especially, and it's sometimes, I mean, I'm glad we've chosen being grumpy or miserable, because we're just talking about general grumpiness and nothing excessive, but it's
not depression. We're talking about
depression. We're not talking about depression. We're just talking about humans who feel grumpy, and how come you're grumpy. Again, we have to be careful of the my's and yours. When you're working with people, it's like, why is your grumpiness somehow of more value than my grumpiness? Or why do I have to live with your grumpiness when we're both in a professional setting? And frankly, you should have sorted that shit out before you got to work. Or find it. Hi, be the Stepford wife, and then, pretending, or the Instagram influencer where you pretend that everything is perfect. And then when you maybe on your way home, go back into your grump. Well, deal with it differently.
We call it emotional labour, don't we? And I think there is an effect definitely where women are expected to do all of this emotional labour. But it's a lot of energy, isn't it? And sort of to have that expectation on you that at work you've got to, if other people don't feel like it, you're, not that you've ever had to do this with me. Someone who's not in a good place, you're suddenly having to try and give them enough of your energy that you can sort of try and bring them out of it and get something done. But it's weird, there is that expectation of professionalism being that you have to come in a certain emotional state. Is that okay? Should we all be pretending everything's brilliant even when it's not?
I mean, there's that rather famously, I think, that It's Okay to Not Be Okay poem that GDS put out. And, it is okay to not be okay. I agree. We are all of us have days where you just can't get out of the whatever it is that's got you in the state that you're in.
Yeah.
But I think when it becomes I stand by that. And at the same time, if you're like that all the time, you're starting to actually make me like, I'm now requiring to find the energy to get over my shit and your shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, hang on a minute.
But
Once, twice, but I think
it
there's
does all
like
come
some
down
level
to
of
energy, doesn't it? It all comes down to energy, and
it
I think like sleep in that respect is very important, and rest and all those things, and like the more overworked and sleep deprived you are, the harder it is to find the energy to sort of overcome perhaps those momentary or not so much negative emotions that we can bring to the table. But yeah, like, should people, how much is it going to be policed? Like, it's sort of like it gets subsumed into your personality at a certain point. But there's another one where people can be quite unpredictable with whether they're going to be misery guts on any particular
which one's
day.
coming today?
Yeah, sort of the bipolar perhaps type, where you kind of like, you can get taken by surprise, and it's one thing to be like, oh, I've got to work with so and so today. Okay, let's get ready to. Oh, la, 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 la. Oh no, we've got a terrible version of them today, and we're gonna have a row.
There's a. I think it's. I think where maybe I feel like I'm having one of those weeks where it's very obvious to me that I'm bringing the energy, and therefore that's why I suggest it as a topic, because it's front of mind. But it even goes to like meeting people for the first time, like on a, you turn up at a Zoom call with one other person and they're like deadpan, hello. Oh, so you want to talk about working together, do you? Well, so far it's looking like it's going to be pretty miserable. It's like when we chatted early in the week, we chatted to a man called Rabbi David, who just turned up, smiling face, hello.
Yes.
And it's just like, straight back, smiling face. It's like, okay, right, all right, we can do this.
Well, standing up, in fact.
He was, in fact.
Yes, he was standing
up.
But
there's very much this like this question of how do you always end up being, I personally often end up, I feel, be the person that's like, whose duty it is to bring the smiling.
Why do you think that is? And is that like what, in general, professionally, or like, why do you think that is? That, I mean, do you think, is it like definitely true that that's the case, or maybe it feels like that? Or
yes, it is.
Why do you like what? And if, let's assume that it is, and like, why do you think it is that you're the one it falls to?
I think part of it is if I walk into a negative situation. Like if I walk into low and negative energy, I can't just sit there and let it stay low and negative. I'm like, come on, people, it's just work. Let's have some fun. I think that's partly my upbringing. My dad was definitely in the category of, every day you have a choice. You could be miserable or you can not be miserable. Sort yourself out. Let's just smile. And then, and we used to have conversations that I've definitely mentioned on here where, yes, you're feeling low today, but you probably won't tomorrow. So just get through today, and, smiling, all that kind of fake it till you make it type stuff, which is all easy to talk about if you don't have an actual diagnosable mental illness. But, I feel like it's part of my training, my life training, to sort of go, oh, everyone seems a bit miserable. And I enjoy it most of the time. I was talking to somebody, I make people laugh. I enjoy making people laugh. That's, I think, the bottom line. If I walk into a shop and everyone's looking a bit miserable, I'll have a little joke with the person, who's serving me, the person on the checkout, whoever it is, and just be silly, and then everyone has a laugh and we all feel better. Or they feel annoyed, but I don't care. At least I tried to do something nice instead of just tell them life was shit. So I like it. I think I like it.
But okay. So there's an effect where because I think if it's your role, if you kind of take it on as your role when you're entering these situations as being the one that is going to bring the energy and make people laugh and try and sort it out, I think it possibly sometimes makes it, when you're not quite feeling the energy, that you're much more likely to avoid the situation entirely. And I think but I think sometimes I've made the mistake of if I have lower expectations of myself to perform or to try and shift anyone else out of a grumpy pants type of mood, I will more easily enter that situation, but maybe I shouldn't. And I know sometimes I'm there's going to be a social situation I should know better than to go ahead and put myself in that situation, because if I get tilted sometimes in that sort of in an environment when there's people, if I get tilted and thrown off, I can find it really hard to pull myself out of it, and then everyone's looking at me and asking me if I'm okay, and I'm I just want to run away, and I should have just made an excuse and just not, just some days I just can't do it. But how do you and I feel as I've got older, I've got better at spotting where that's likely to happen, and I think I probably need to get better at perhaps flaking a little bit sometimes and going, look, I think it's better that I just avoid this situation than do something turn up and be sad. But then sometimes you don't know what you were so afraid of, and you have a great time, so it's really hard to sort of,
I mean, it is hard. Of course it is hard, and it's hard. I mean, I think one of the things I find is that people, because I'm the, come on, let's sort this out, blah, 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 fat everyone. Mm. When I can't, or when I'm low, nobody's ready for it. Fuck's going on? Ivanka's is not right. And they don't, instead of going, are you all right? People are like, what's the matter with you? It's and it's I've disappointed everybody because I've taken the wrong role, almost, or people aren't ready to respond to it because that's not what they're used to. I think there's a bit of that. And then there's a bit of or if I guess it's I'm trying to think, it's can't you tell I'm not right? Why don't you ask me how I am? Sort of internal dialogue going on, getting more miserable because nobody's psychically connecting with the fact that I want to be asked how I am. I mean, there's a lot of it. It's like the inner, I was going to say inner child, but I think it's not a child. It is a tantrum, isn't it? It's like an internal. For me, it's so an internal tantrum that nobody knows I'm having.
No, I was thinking of it as a feedback loop where the negative, if unvoiced negative feelings just can end up compounding, and you start resenting someone for not seeing it. But definitely temper tantrums are I don't know if my dad would beg to differ, but I feel because there were so many of us, I feel for me to have a temper tantrum would have just been, come on, just kind of impossible for me as a child. And I don't know how. It's hard to know what the actual situation was, but I feel since being with Sharon for a few years, I've sort of been given permission to have the odd temper tantrum and go, no, I don't, and it's very cathartic, and sometimes you just need to do it. And I think it was good that I've sort of painted in that missing childish part of myself, just to sometimes you just can't I just, but yeah, you probably shouldn't show up to a social situation or a meeting when you are either internally or externally having a temper tantrum. But then how do you get help? It's like, the inside thing, like, how can someone help you unless they see that you're sad? Like, it's a whole thing. We need it.
It's really like that. It's not most of my, I do think, let's say in that first time I meet somebody situation in a Zoom call, we both have a duty to show up with some positive energy. There's no history there. There's no relationship there. I think I use this thing about manners so often now, but it's manners. Hello, I'm glad you've turned up this meeting. It's respectful. We've both turned up. Let's both speak with some enthusiasm. That's different to those long-term relationship things. And I think so much of it is like I don't want to be friends with people who are pretending all the time to be okay. You can't pretend. It's not, we don't, it's just that there is I think sometimes you need to have your sulk about having to deal with other people's sulks. Otherwise you can get really resentful for no, I mean, yeah, I had something more clear in my head, but then I remembered the one-to-one, and I was like, no, you don't have a right to turn up to that miserable. If you're miserable to the first time you're meeting me, then cancel, do it another day.
Yeah, there's I think it's because when you start, I don't know, you're interviewing someone for a job or a relationship, like when you start our relationship, and it sort of is quite important to understand, like, someone's on their best behaviour. It's important that we're on our best behaviour to start with, but it's also like useful to know about someone when they don't have the energy to be on their best behaviour, what that's going to be like. And this is kind of, there's that saying, like, your character is revealed by who you are when you're under stress or when you're struggling. Like, that's when your true character is revealed. And how guilty should I feel for those times where even this week, just not feeling good, and all I want to do is like say something a little bit moany and try and get someone to ask me what's wrong, and I'm like, well, that's not a very charismatic way of dealing with discomfort. So, and is that truly who I am? Am I truly the person with less energy, or is it just energy? And maybe we don't have to judge people so harshly for having a bad day.
I think it's brought into what I'm thinking about a lot during this conversation is the having a child and how having a person there who's growing. I feel differently about, of course she knows when I'm angry. Of course she knows when I'm grumpy and miserable. I can't pretend that these aren't human emotions. Going back to Robert and the first time I went to him for a therapy session, I was angry. Like, I'm just so angry. And when he said good, I was absolutely gobsmacked. It's like, what? And then I could unpack. But so it's like, it's not pretending that these emotions don't exist, but you're also trying to demonstrate through your actions that there are ways of dealing with it that are, we're a family, we're all feeling, if one of us is feeling really sad, then we can help that person, but we don't all have to be really sad all day just because you're sad.
There's that emotional awareness, self-awareness. You can be sad, but if you can articulate, instead of behaving like a misery guts, you can enter into a situation and say, I'm feeling like a bit of a misery guts today, so maybe we can keep this one short. Sorry about that. Like, if you can be self-aware about it rather than letting it, take control of you, that's really the goal, isn't it? That's enlightenment. I think I observe these feelings. I embrace them. Like I did a little meditation this week. I was like, I'm going to find one on YouTube. It was like, I observe the fear, I look on it with loving kindness, and you suddenly go, well, yeah, this is all necessary. This is all part of me.
Yeah.
We don't have to become our emotions, and that's where the most damage is done, when people become their anger and exact that with physical violence or emotional violence, like unwittingly just taken over. And yeah, like the next level of consciousness must be to spot it, maybe warn people around about it, but certainly don't just become it. And that sometimes feels impossible.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, but I think that's exactly the crux of it. If you did turn up even to that first meeting with somebody and say, I really wanted to meet you today, and I really want to have this conversation, bear with me a bit, I've had some terrible news, or I am really fed up today, and I'm just, and then you're even, in fact, I think that would be very refreshing.
It shows some, like, I think that's one way I got a job, was like, I turned up to this job interview, and I've probably talked about it, but like I had the worst like coffee withdrawal. I just quit caffeine a week, but like 3 days before, I had this headache that could not be stopped, like by painkillers, and my whole body was like this. And I noticed that I was like talking a bit like frantically, and I noticed that I was like, I'm sorry, like I'm in huge caffeine withdrawal and in a lot of pain, but so just bear with me while I hope I'm not talking too like manically. But I think that I got the job. Like I think that probably answers that question of, well, what is this person going to be like when they're suffering? And it's you want to know that, don't you? You don't want to just be blindsided by it the first time they have a bad day.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I'm very good at doing those things. I will lose my temper eventually. I think, do you know what? I think I lose my temper in a work thing more than I do at home. I don't know. Well,
that's probably better than.
I don't know. I'm just thinking like, when I get, and it's usually just that sort of compounded, unexpressed stuff that just in the end comes out in a and then but it burns out pretty fast. And I think I've always let myself get away with it because it burns fast, and I can, once it's got to that, I can snap out of it much more easily. Maybe it's something to do with it, but I was going to say it's like a bit of an explosion of energy, and so therefore it's like a reset. But so that that sort of temper tantrum-y type thing, it can be very quick. I can get really angry, and I don't know. It's nice for it's not nice for me. It's not nice for the people around me. I don't know.
I get scared that like once someone sees that side of me, that they're gonna abandon me. Like that's just one of my fears that I have. But I do have some thoughts. I'm going to throw in the final break where you are going to have to look at me running around.
That's the point of it.
I won't play the same music type. Michael, rushing through the day before, choosing music and clips. He's put the same music on 2 clips. But donut. This didn't happen when I edited it all. There's 2 aspects to one big problem of feeling like a misery guts or being in a low energy bad mood is then we start looking. We can misattribute those feelings to someone else.
Yeah.
And that gets very messy. We start projecting things onto someone else that aren't their fault. And, vice versa. And that's when it really gets out of control, I think. Because I watched an interesting video about left brain, right brain, and how much I think it's the language brain, the left brain will do something, and the language brain will just invent a story that explains why they did that, even though they blatantly have no idea why they did that. But we are constantly retroactively making spurious explanations for why we did something, or certainly why we feel a certain way, or because we feel a certain way, we will just perceive the world in very different ways, and we will blame different aspects of the world. And one of the things I find hardest about, full-time misery guts people is that they're never saying, I feel bad because this personal thing happened to me. They're saying, there is war and famine and starvation, and that's what I'm angry and unhappy about. And I'll be like, those things are bad, but I don't believe that's why you're unhappy.
Yeah. I think it's going back. The fact is, there's a difference between this is why I end up feeling resentful. I think it's like, okay, I cannot be kind every day, unfortunately, but I'm trying to be kind every day. So sometimes I can't cope with your miserable gutness or your grump or whatever it is, because as much as I'm aware that we all have problems and I want to be kind, some days I can't, and I'm sorry. Those people that always bring the negative, you're like, hang on a minute, why can't you try and be kinder to me, even if not yourself? Why can't you think about, why do you think that it's okay to not work on that, not be more self-aware, to demonstrate a total lack of respect for everybody around you, which means that they have to experience your life misery through their working day. That's what I think I find it at a point it's just completely uncaring. I've
definitely been I've lent on, I've turned people into the positive person in my life, and I would be the misery guts. And this is years ago, drinking too much, probably, well, definitely smoking too much, all those things. But I was the miserable one all the time, but I didn't even understand how much energy I was asking of the other person,
And that's, I did that loving, the loving kindness meditation. I think it's the first time I realised that this person at work, that wasn't you. No, it's like, when it tells you to think of somebody who makes you angry.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of this person. I just had this, this moment of revelation and I've definitely talked about this before. It's like that whole, I can change my reaction, but I can't change them. It's just sometimes changing your reaction is hard and wrong. How will that person ever know what effect they're having if I don't say, look, I really enjoy working with you, but you come in every day with a miserable face. I'm sorry, but it's not fair on the rest of us. What can we do to help you? How can you? Do you know that you're having this effect on everybody? And there are people like that. I mean, maybe even take it out of the work situation. I've had friends that just, every conversation starts with all the things that are going wrong. And I mean, maybe, I don't know. I think it's very difficult. I think in a weird way, this whole episode is me having a moan about something that most of the time doesn't bother me at all. And then on the days it does, it really bothers me. I
think with emotions, they were invented for a reason. Emotions and so sometimes you have the emotion first, and then you can dig into why you think. And the more you sort of learn about how our childhood affects us, and we're all just children at the end of the day, and but our emotions tell us there's a problem, and then it's up to us to kind of rationally figure out what the real problem is, and that's definitely a skill. And then
I think this is for me, this is like a proper therapy session episode. But I do have one more story that I'm going to bring. Going back to Robert and him being like, good that you feel angry, and then the next step to that was, anger is a survival technique. If you're feeling, if somebody's coming to steal your food, you need to get angry so you can fight back, was that conversation. And then, I'm going to completely go off on an Ivanka tangent. I was off did I tell you about the when we were ordering the kitchen? And we're standing with the shop assistant.
And she, and
that woman comes over and interrupts. And it's like, I think in those moments when people are being blatantly unaware of how they are affecting the people around them, you do have to actually sometimes say your behaviour is it's affecting.
You've got to, if you know you're feeling a certain way because something's happening, and you can say, well, no, this is definitely because of this reason. You can act on that and use that. And I'm actually a huge believer of using anger to help me make a change, to help me push through something, because I'm going to use, because it does give you a certain kind of energy. And the answer is not we shouldn't be suppressing these emotions.
No.
We should be observing them, right? We should be accepting them. We shouldn't, if you just pretend they're not there, that's definitely never going to go well. It's going to come out in a bad way. But if we can be like thoughtful and mindful about what we act on and understand why and to say, right, today I'm going to speak up about this, or this is I'm going to use this energy to change something and move forwards in my life, and that's going to be a good thing. Or I'm gonna, even if I'm having a bad day, I'm going to use this as I'm going to go back to bed and just
have the day off, have a day
miserable.
Yeah. I think I was like, I had somebody that worked with when I was leading a team once, and it was late every single day to stand up. I would walk in with a kind of like slow stroll, 5 minutes late every time. Never a smiley good morning, just like too, I don't know, I can't, the only way to describe it, more like a too cool for school type attitude, like. And then, so it went on for a while, and I actually, had a chat with them in a meeting where I was like, do you know that you're doing this? Like, are you aware that not only are you late, but you walk in with a I don't care sort of attitude, which is like making everybody feel massively disrespected. Like, we don't care that you're late, or like our time's less valuable or whatever. And and we had a quick chat.
Were they aware?
No, I don't think they were. I don't think it was even deliberate. It was just like nobody had ever said, do you know that you are pissing everybody off? And he never did it. Okay, every so often he'd slip, but he really tried not to. Which, so it's like I think for me personally, Ivanka, the thing I need to be aware of is that if somebody's behaviour is pissing me off, it's unfair to be cross with them unless I've told them this thing that you do makes me feel like this. What are we going to do about it?
And the sort of emotions that help you get to that stage are the ones that don't let you. It's no better not to say anything because you're feeling pissed off. So you might as well say something, and that's sort of how. That's how this animal is programmed at the end of the day, isn't it? Like the disproportionate anger lets you react disproportionately, which is how you deter people from, this is a sweary episode, deter people from fucking with you. Like this is, and then some people seem to have that gene a little bit too much, and they seem to do very well in life, which is scary. I'm going to sue everyone.
Are they happy?
No, they're not. So we don't care about them. But there's. But yeah, if we can just avoid being driven around like meat suits by our emotions, and it's hard to be called out on something that hurts, especially if we didn't mean any harm or we didn't mean to hurt people, and we were. It can be hard to be told that you've been that suddenly think, oh, have I been doing this all this time? How many people, being told to apologize to someone for snapping, I'm like, fuck, if that's an apologizable offense, I am absolutely a monster. Like, and that that can be hard. But that's growth, right? Like, it hurts.
but I think people don't get told, because I do think I put myself in a position. I've got this massive that's not fair, you can't talk to me like that gene, or whatever it is, or from my upbringing. Like I attribute a lot of the way I behave to my father, whether it's genetic or behavioural, I don't know, but I was allowed to shout back at him. I was allowed to stand up for myself, and one time I shouted back at him and he was like, the Red Army can't threaten me. But I take that attitude, so I'm in a job and people talk, and then you realise that the man, it's almost always a man that's talking to me in a particular way that is unacceptable, has never been told. He's never been told that what he's doing is because, people just move on to a different job, or they leave, or they just don't do sit quietly in a corner. But actually, 9 times out of 10, the person who is told that their behaviour affects other people will want to do something about it. It's very rarely malicious.
And while you kind of have to trust that they're not going to flip out, or there has to be enough trust that, but then that's kind of what the environment does as well. Like, if they're in an environment where they can't stab you or something for making them feel bad.
But sometimes you say something to somebody, you go, look, the way that what you did there, I found it incredibly rude and dismissive. Oh, I didn't mean it like that. Okay, but that's how it came across. And then there's a question of whether or not they decide it's worth doing it. It's just like, then there's this standoff of, well, you better get used to it because that's how I talk. Or I'm sorry, I shall try not to do that in the future. And that's actually the test.
And also, but then also, like, people are going to resist it in the moment, and then maybe, it's hard to get someone to actually change in that moment. You're going to bring all of your emotional defense. You're going to rationalize it. You're saying, oh, well, no, I was may say, oh, these reasons, those reasons, in the moment, but then you're going to maybe sleep on it and go, oh,
Unfortunately, I didn't mean to. Isn't really a defense.
But it's just like they've got to give, like, if you could do it in a situation where they were then able to go and have a cry in a private environment, then that would be ideal.
Yes. You have to be conscious of not just call them out in front of everybody.
And at the start of a big meeting that they can't leave. That's going to be rough.
In front of all their colleagues. Best to do it one-on-one, I find. Maybe in a meeting room that you can leave them in, or on a Zoom room where they can switch off their computer and go for a walk. Yes, but I get feedback about how I affect people. But yes, I think if somebody's really making you feel miserable, you do have a right to tell them.
And it comes back to, you can't absorb everything. If we just keep absorbing it, it's like we're coming back to being a misery guts. It's like putting the energy into not being misery guts is you're also absorbing other people's energy. Negative energy. What are you doing? We're kind of like sucking up and converting other people's negative. I'm saying energy like I'm not a physicist. That's probably energy is actually a thing. Crystals look cool. That's about it though, unless you put them in a watch. Anyway,
yes. On that highly scientific note.
It's all about energy flow, man, and consciousness and space travel. Something like that. Yeah, let's finish it.
Like that, yeah. I think
Thanks for listening. If you like the podcast and the scrappy little live recording that we do these days, you can come to grandpodcast.com. What a coup. What a great domain name. Subscribe. in your app of choice. Support us on Patreon for access to the videos and something else. I forget what. Where can people find you on the internet, Ivanka?
People can find me at Ivanka on Twitter. Oh yeah, look, it's under my name.
Find me at Michael Forrest, at Michael Forrest on Twitter, and come and see what I'm doing at squares.tv. Another good domain name. And don't forget to come and join us on canyousseemyscreenpodcast.com. Next week we're releasing an interview with it's a podcast where we talk about running better workshops, training and meetings online. We had a really good chat with Rabbi David Paskin this week, and so that's going to come out next Wednesday. And it was a great chat about how we can just look super cool on camera, and why we should try harder, and how much better things could be. So just come and get subscribed to the new one, because that's it's value. It has more value than therapy to the two of us. We're really trying to do something that has value to you. So, yeah, hopefully we'll see you on the other podcast, but fine, do what you want. It's your life. And we'll see you next week on this one, hopefully. Bye!
Bye, 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 bye.